Hello, listener. I'm so glad you're here. Today's discussion highlights two of the authors in the upcoming book, Are We Friends or Coworkers? Exploring Relationships at Work. This book is scheduled to be published in just 1 week, coming soon, May 30th. The book has 24 contributing authors from the Changing Work Collective. Changing Work is an online community of conscious humans who aim to change work from the inside out. If you're interested in checking out any of Changing Work's books, you can find them on bookshop.org, that's bookshop.org, or amazon.com. My name is Wainwright Yu. I'm a technology leader and a leadership coach who focuses on helping neurodivergent people uncover their unique strengths and thrive. I'm also a member of Changing Work, and I'm an author from Changing Work's second book, Leading with Compassion. I'll be your host for today. Our authors for today's panel discussion are Julia Melim and Aram Latif. Hello, Julia. Hello, Aram. How are you?
Good.
Hi. Hello. Hi, everybody.
I felt a lot of warmth and excitement from those hellos. Hello, hello. Let's start with some quick introductions. Tell us who you are, what brought you to Changing Work, and what brought you to becoming a co-author of this book. How about we start with you, Aram?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Let's see. I'll start with one of the latter questions first. So I came to Changing Work through book two also. So I am a Changing Work member. And for me, just having been in private industry over the last 20 plus years, the mission and vision for Changing Work really spoke to me personally. I've had, like many people, just a variety of some good, some not so good experiences across my career. And I feel very passionately about, again, the mission and vision for Changing Work and really making a difference. Let's change where we spend a lot of our days every day, right? And we all have so much knowledge and wisdom to share. And so very excited to be a part of this movement and this effort. And yeah, so I have spent the past 20 years on the healthcare side, focused on helping patients and coaching patients in helping improve their healthcare outcomes, and have extrapolated all my methodologies to the workplace.
If you don't mind, Aram, because we were both part of book two, I'd love to ask you just one quick follow-up question, which
Sure.
is what brought you back for round two of writing a collaborative book?
Again, I think the experience in and of itself is so unique. You get to be a writer and a reader, right? You get to kind of collaborate. You get to co-create with like-minded individuals. And it's just the ethos of everyone working together for this kind of common good in real time, right? It's something that you get to see the fruits of your labor within months versus years and years. And it's very gratifying, I think, and just it's definitely a very much a team effort. And I think in the truest sense of the word, and that's what speaks to me.
Absolutely. I've enjoyed reading the pre-published version of book three for exactly this reason. It's just been wonderful to see all the stories. How about you, Julia?
Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. It's so great being here. I also feel very excited to be a part of a book where we have so many amazing authors. And, each chapter really inspired me. Like every time I'm reading someone's chapter, I feel inspired to do better, to be better in the workplace. And a lot of those chapters also help you find solutions or, they're really like learning lessons on how you can show up in the workplace. And I came to changing work through the pandemic actually, because I did the inner MBA back with Sounds True and LinkedIn, and Scott Shute was actually working with LinkedIn and as the head of mindfulness and compassion. Um, Leader, and he was just so inspiring, just talking about bringing more compassion to the workplace and just like doing compassion meditations and reflections around that, how it can be more self-compassionate and all of that. So that's how I got connected with him. And then when he told me about changing work, I felt really inspired to learn more about it, and then found out about the opportunity to be an author in a collaborative book. And it's just really nice to collaborate with so many different writers. And it's also my first book. So It's going to be the first time that, I mean, I'm finally going to be a published author. And that's exciting in itself as well, to finally share your message with the world.
I love that, and I agree with both of you. One thing about the mission of changing work from the inside and out, at least for me, when I first heard it, is there's a sense of humility from it, which is, it's from the inside. I mean, it starts with one person perhaps, and that's very achievable. Starting with one person, changing one person's heart or mind feels doable. But if you do that for everyone, then you make a massive impact. So thank you for those introductions. So the theme of this book, and every book has a different theme, so it's super interesting to see what the themes are. For this one, it's called Are We Friends or Coworkers? So what came to mind for you when you first heard the book's theme? And how about we start with you this time, Julia?
Sure. Yeah. So for me, I'm a writer and actress as well. And I've worked as a TV host, covering a lot of red carpet events, interviewing celebrities on the red carpet. So that's something that I also wanted to talk about, kind of like the behind the scenes of that entertainment world. Because so many people talk about the lights and the glamour and the spotlight, and you don't really see like all the hardships that go on behind the scenes. And sometimes it's like really heavy themes that we have to deal with, or people are going through a hard time in their lives, and you have to put on your best face forward. You have to keep smiling because you're on the spotlight. So, it's like when you're an actor, you're on stage, people don't really know what's going on behind the scenes, or it doesn't matter. Not that it doesn't matter, but it's like, even if you had like a bad day, or if you're going through something difficult, you still have to act a part. Uh, so to me, what was interesting, it was kind of like bringing down that curtain and talking about those hardships. And I talk about one of our colleagues who took his life, and that impacted me a lot. And it was really hard to talk about it for a long time, because even the people that knew him, we all, had that in common, that we all wished that we could have done something. And um, but when something like that happens, you always look back and you think, what could I have done differently? Or is there any way that I could have reached out sooner? Is there anything that I could have made a difference? And I think that was, what I wanted to accomplish right in this chapter. Even though it's a difficult topic, I wanted to put it out there so maybe it could help other people in the future. And especially in entertainment too, where a lot of those things are not talked about, for actors, writers, reporters, that maybe they are going through a hard time, and maybe they can identify somehow and connect with other people, or just like feel like sharing can also create some healing around that.
Thank you so much, Julia, for sharing that story. And I agree with you. There are certain, like, we try to maintain a boundary between work, the professional life, and our personal life. And when moments like that happen, there's just no, like, the boundary just disappears, because it's such a impactful moment. And we'll get to your chapter in a moment. But thank you so much for being here, being an author, and sharing those stories with everyone.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you. Yeah, I really think that the boundaries are key, and sometimes they get blurred, one way or another. But in the end, it's really important to remind ourselves that we all have that shared humanity in common.
Agreed. You want to speak to us, Aram, about the theme of the book and what that meant for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's such an obvious question, but yet it's not. There's so many blurred lines, I think, in our workplace, as because of the fact that we don't really have any kind of real guidance that's provided throughout our schooling process, right? So whether we go through, graduate school or even undergraduate before our first job, right? Many times we're taught the logistics of, accounting and marketing and, finance, but do we ever really learn how to manage those relationships? And to me, I thought it was such a kind of a pivotal question that needs to be addressed, and that's what really resonated with me. I know I've had a gamut of experiences in my own professional career, and I mean, some have been amazing and have resulted in friendships, and others have been just I'll just say toxic work environments can be very mentally debilitating also. And so just to be able to address that once and for all and kind of level set was my personal goal.
Thank you, Aram. Julia, since you already shared a little bit about your chapter, if it's okay, let's start by diving into your story. And one of the things that I was struck by as I was reading your chapter was just how moving and how deep some of the stories were. And my first question was actually going to be, if there was one thing that you'd like to share with the audience today from that chapter, what would it be? And perhaps it was already what you shared earlier with that story about your coworker having taken his own life.
Yeah, I think that, for me, it was hard to even write about that and to even share from like a personal place as well, from like my own journey of like coming from Brazil to the US. And there's so many things that I shared that are so vulnerable that I had never shared with anyone. And I think that's why it's moving too. So many times I kept going back and forth when I was writing and we're doing rewrites and editing. And I was thinking, oh, should I take this out? This feels too personal. Like maybe I should, this is my chance to take out this story or this part of the story. And I just felt like I would be doing a disservice if I didn't share, all the whole story or like all the vulnerable parts of it, because that's what makes it moving and that's what makes us connect with each other. And actually, when they sent me the final version of the chapter and I read the whole chapter, I actually cried. So even though, of course, like I knew what I was talking about, but it still moved me. So that's what made me really feel like I was on the right track there, and I really should not edit myself. Um, because it's all about hiding those parts of yourself that you feel that, oh, this is like these are the ugly parts of myself. I don't want anybody to know this. I want to look perfect. I don't want people to know that I'm messy or that, my life is not amazing. And it's, what they talk about, the highlight reel. You always want, with Instagram, social media, like all of that, you're always showing your highlight reel, how perfect your life is. And it's really hard to kind of like bring down that curtain and say, I've been through a lot of trauma. I've been through difficult moments. I've had moments where I didn't know what to do or like that I faced challenges as well. And I think that's what can help people more than trying to pretend that you're perfect or that you've never gone through any hardship. So those are the reasons why I shared my chapter. And even in the chapter, I say, this is what I've been trying to hide my whole life. And I think also when you're not sharing all those parts of you, you start losing that authenticity because you're so like overworked. You're working so hard to keep that mask up that in the end you don't even know who you are anymore because you're just like you're spending so much energy into hiding who you really are. And I think that's what this whole chapter and writing the book has been about for me. It's been a journey of uncovering my true self. And hopefully, on that path, I can also help other people on that same journey to not be afraid and not have any shame around any trauma that they have gone through.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the connection between this sort of um, self disclosure, self acceptance, with the theme, which is sort of more about friendship and relationships. Um, how would you describe the connection of being more willing to be vulnerable, and then how that impacts the relationships you can have at work?
Well, I think that it changes everything because a lot of the times we're editing ourselves when we're in the workplace. And that's one of the biggest, I would say, if there is any, silver lining to the pandemic, was that we saw each other from a more like human standpoint.
Mm.
I think that was one of the biggest silver linings from the pandemic that you could see, oh, we're all human. We all have loved and lost, and we're dealing with grief and family, and we all have these personal challenges, and we didn't separate it as much, right? At the same time, it's not easy. I think we still go through challenges in the workplace, and people have their own frustrations, and they're still dealing with stress, and that they don't know how to navigate. And we're all going through all of it all the time. So I think that how that changes your relationships in the workplace is really your ability to stand up for yourself and be authentic, and not have to edit yourself so much to fit in, or to try to people please, or those kinds of things that I think in a way, they're in the long run, they really chip away at you, at your personality, at your identity. So it's really about embracing your identity, who you are, with all of it, like your history or your traumas or your challenges, and the beautiful parts too. Like, I think, it's about embracing all parts of you.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense. Like the more you can be authentic to yourself, the more you can build authentic relationships on top of that self
Exactly.
understanding. Yeah. There
Yeah.
were, there were a number of phrases and sentences in your chapter that were really striking, and I'll call out a few of them right now. One of them was the words "feed your soul," which you say in the chapter that is your mission in life. Um, if you're open to it, maybe share what does that mean to you, those words, and how do you do it?
Well, for me, feeding your soul is about really putting your mental health first, and making time for your self-care, for your wellness. And I think those are things that I didn't do before, I wasn't so radical. Like, I think that's more about like radical self-care. When we're talking about like radical compassion, radical wellness, but radical self-care, because it's not something that you can put away, or like you can, put off for a long time, or just say, oh, I'm going to do it tomorrow, and then you never take time for yourself. So I think it's really like pivoting from the burnout culture, the culture that really like, that you pride yourself into being, burnout and like never taking a day off, and to actually switch that into, no, I need to make time for myself. I need to make time for self-care. And some ways that has changed for me was, meditating every day. So I always wake up earlier. I always make an hour available. So however time it is in the morning. So if I have to wake up by 7, I'd rather wake up by 6, or from 6 to 7, I'll have time for self-care. If I have to wake up by 8, I'll wake up by 7. I always wake up an hour earlier than I have to wake up. So I make that my hour, and I call it my first hour is mine. And it's just like whatever I want to do in those in moments, or in that hour. So usually it's like a meditation. I'll do 15-20 minutes of meditation, affirmations, intention setting, journaling. And honestly, it really makes a huge difference on how your day goes. The days that I don't set an intention, or the days that I don't do journaling, or that I don't do meditation, even if I say I'll do it tonight, my day is completely different. So it's just like, do it first thing in the morning. Feed your soul and do it first thing in the morning, and find the time to do it, because life is short. And I think that's what, if anything, like if you can take anything away from my chapter, is just that if you keep, putting it off, like, I mean, you never know if you're ever going to find the time to do it. So don't put off your self-care. Find the time today, even if it's 15-20 minutes a day, do it, because you have to, you have to do it for yourself. That, that it's about self-love, it's about self-care. And there is a quote that, before, even when I started meditating, before I really made that whole hour, they always said, like, if you don't have time in your day, meditate for 5 minutes. But if you're too busy for meditation, meditate an hour. So so it's really about like, the busier you are, the more you actually need it.
Absolutely. And the other two quotes that were also super powerful from your chapter are, the second one is success is about falling deeply and madly in love with yourself. And then the third one was being yourself is your biggest revolutionary act. Um, so you might have already explained this as part of that same theme, but anything else you'd share around this that had led you to some of those really powerful statements?
Yeah, so I'm a writer and an actress, and I think in both of those careers, that applies, or any career really. But, especially when you're talking about arts, a lot of the times, like when you don't go for your passions, if you don't do what you're really passionate about and you keep trying to fit in or like mold into other people's expectations, you're never going to find that happiness that you're looking for. There's always going to be a part of you that's wondering, oh, what if I did this? What if I wrote the book? What if I did the play? What if I went for acting or writing or, painting or whatever your passion is? So that's where that comes from. And I think it really comes from falling in love with who you really are, what you're really passionate about, accepting yourself, and not just accepting yourself, but really going for it. Because once you do it, once I started focusing more on my passions, on my acting, on my writing, I just really started like rediscovering myself and really falling deeply and madly in love with myself in a healthy way, not in a narcissistic way, but in a way of like accepting yourself and like really honoring everything that you stand for and everything you're passionate about without trying to change, who you are or just like fit in somebody else's expectations. Just love yourself for who you are and like really, you know, don't try to hide it. Like don't try to hide what you're really passionate about, who you really are, and like go for your passions, go for it because it's never going to go away. Like whatever you're passionate about, what lights you up, it lights you up for a reason. So that's what Feed Your Soul is. Like it ties in with that too. Is about doing what lights you up and really like focusing, putting your energy towards what really lights you up because we need to find that joy in life, you know.
Absolutely. As you were speaking, I had this immediate impulse to sort of just pause and internalize that for myself. And the other feeling I got was whatever that source of energy is, it is pouring outward, meaning typically whatever you're really good at, you'd want to share. So sort of it's sort of the opposite of being narcissistic. It's actually not selfish. At some point, if there's something that you really value and gives you energy, you want to give it away to other people. I find is a very common thing as well. Thank you so much, Julia, for
Yeah, it's
yeah.
about it
Mhm,
really is about like hearing you say that it actually brings me back to like it really is about sharing your gifts with the world.
mhm.
And, yeah, if you think about it, when you pivot, you realize it's actually selfish not to share your gifts with the world, right? Because we're all good at something. We all have like our genius zone. And when you are in that genius zone, it's really when you're going to shine. So it really makes no sense. Why would you not shine? As a community, you'd want to bring your best self and, where you shine the most to others to share with others. So it really is generous when you think about it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Julia. Aram, I think it might be time for us to talk about your chapter here.
Sure.
And there is this fun and memorable concept you introduce in it, and you have this really nice acronym. You call it GIRLIE. That's GIRLIE. Would you be open to sharing a bit more about this concept to our audience here?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, I think all of us, as you know, we've been in our professional spaces, we come up with ways that we approach our day-to-day work lives, whether that's relationships, whether that's how we are kind of presenting ourselves and how we're kind of performing and performing our roles. And I realized over the very early part of my career that I'm a type A personality and I like rules and guidance. And so I had to create a guidance system for myself, basically. And so I developed Girly to help kind of help me navigate workplace relationships ultimately. And I do prioritize while I was developing Girly, I realized that it is, and very similar to what Julia touched on, it's really about as we present ourselves to this new group of people in the workplace at every job, we need to really align with who we are and be our authentic selves, right? We can't put on masks. We can't try to fit into other people's definitions of ourselves. So the very first part of Girly is, in fact, to kind of sit with yourself and align with who you are as an individual and be authentic to yourself. And then after that, you can kind of dive into the methodology. So the G stands for goal. So for every relationship, we sometimes have a goal, sometimes we don't, right? In kind of the more traditional family relationships, we have, mother, father, daughter, sister. There are defined expectations, if you will, in those relationship paradigms. And I wanted something similar in my workplace relationship. So with every role, it wasn't just about the title, it wasn't just about the function. It's about understanding when I go forth in this, X role, I want to be this person and I want to achieve A, B, and C. And so it's really kind of consciously identifying what that role or what that goal for yourself in that role is, whatever your exact job function. And then the flip side of goal is actually intention, right? So you have this goal while you're, you're fulfilling a role there in a company, but then it's understanding that consciously setting an intention really changes the trajectory of your own personal kind of conduct and performance. And by aligning your goal with your intention, you are actually setting a standard for yourself, whether or not you realize it or not. And that's what helps then guide the other two aspects, right? So then, based on your role, whether you're a manager, whether you're just a colleague or a member of a larger team, and you're all working together for some greater projects, deliverable, you can really synthesize and kind of navigate all of your day-to-day actions, whether those are conversations, whether those are, working on deliverables, whether those are whatever aspect of your job that you're trying to manage. And then the last letter, E, is to me, I think almost one of the more important ones, and it's based on ethics, right? So we can set goals with intention and we can identify the role in which we are trying to fulfill and excel at. But if we don't have that internal compass that drives our ethics, that, navigates our behavior, that's, I think, where we kind of derail as individuals in a workplace. And that's where I believe personally that toxicity component can come from, right? So if there's one or more individuals in a workplace environment that have a very kind of singular focus, whether that's financial, whether that's, their own success, without really thinking about the team in large, that does create, it really kind of throws the rest off trajectory wise. So to me, I think it's very important to consider all four with a very holistic lens, and kind of with that level of alignment so that you really do focus on what your personal goal is, what your personal intention is, and what you want to achieve with a given role. And then again, really consider the role itself. Do you want to be a manager that is a mentor that helps, foster professional development? Or are you just ordering people around because you got the title manager? And then again, that ethics piece just brings it all home and kind of, I think, serves as that compass or that North Star for whatever role you're fulfilling.
The words that came to mind for me as I was listening to you speak, Aram, was the idea of mindful relationships. So just looking at the
Exactly.
different dimensions of, what you would have to keep in mind as you're being intentional about what you're trying to accomplish with the relationship. That's thank you for sharing that framework. I find that a lot of the frameworks or tools that we have in our lives often start with some specific event or story. Was there a story behind Girly?
Yes, exactly. There was, again, I was, when you kind of change, I'll say, levels in different roles, you go from being just let's just say I went from being a project manager to then a project just a project manager to a project lead, then all of a sudden I am responsible, right? Whatever that means. And so as I went from, I'll say, a lower level role to a more leadership based managerial role, I personally needed to kind of sit with myself and understand what moving parts I had to deal with, to understand that I am, in fact, helping lead and guide individuals, right, who are also then trying to bring their best foot forward in their individual roles, and really understanding that it's it's a dynamic, right? Much to what Julia kind of referred to. We're all humans. We're all working, hopefully in something that we're passionate about. But ultimately, we all want to excel, not only as individuals, but in whatever collective goal we all have together. And in order to do so, I think it really behooves every individual to really think through what they want to achieve in any given job. And for me, I sat with it very seriously, having been made a manager of a group, because I wanted to make sure that I was leading my team appropriately and with a clear conscience and a direction.
I love that. And I think for me, is as I reflect on my career, the funny turning point is when I became a parent. I started becoming much more mindful of the relationships I have at work. For some reason, that crossover happened in my mind. So yes, there are these sort of turning points in life where you just
Absolutely.
realize, yeah. In your chapter, you talk about emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. Um, some people have heard about emotional intelligence, although emotional maturity has been less talked about. I'd love to maybe hear your definition of these, and how they're different
Yeah,
and how you use them. Yeah.
absolutely. And to your point, I think I did weave those concepts into my chapter mainly because I think they go hand in hand, right? As you're considering your goal, your intention, your role, it depends on your level of emotional intelligence and emotional maturity on how you then enact those letters in your day-to-day life at work. So emotional intelligence is, the way I describe it, is the knowing of your emotions, right? And the understanding of your individual emotions. So for instance, my ability to say, oh, I've had a bad morning, so I'm feeling frustrated. That's emotional intelligence. And I'm sure we can all agree that a lot of leadership roles, when you are being vetted for certain level roles, they look at your emotional intelligence. Conversely, on the other side, emotional maturity is actually looked at less. However, I feel like it's actually the more important aspect. So the way I describe it is emotional intelligence is the knowing, whereas emotional maturity is the act, the engagement of,
Mm.
right? So not only is it important for me to understand that maybe I've had a bad morning, my coffee didn't taste right, something happened to throw my day off, but then to come to work and realize that others have possibly had similar experiences, right? A bad bus drop off for a child, or a fender bender on the way to work. Something happened to kind of throw your day into a little bit of a spin. And the understanding of what to do with those different levels of emotions coming at you from different relationships. And I can think the easiest way to explain it is, you're lacking emotional maturity if you use phrases, if you play the victim role, like, you probably don't want to work with me, I'm no good at this job. I mean, that's somebody who's not emotionally mature. They might have some sort of underlying lack of self-confidence. And so it's important to be emotionally mature in addition to just having the intelligence of being aware of our emotions. So it becomes a whole exercise again in self-awareness, and really being dialed into oneself, right? And what myself, where I am as an individual, and how that might impact others, and at the same time understanding that everyone else is navigating that same journey, right? Very similar to, tying it back to what Julia was speaking to. If we don't, as individuals, take care of ourselves and become aware of who we are as individuals, when we present in these workplace environments, if we're not cognizant of our own issues, emotions, stressors, then we can not only impact our day, but others. And being able to juggle that from a very kind of, I would say, high level, like bird's eye level, is hugely important. And that kind of brings in that emotional maturity piece. And that's just, it's a quality that we all need to, I think, aspire to in the workplace.
Yeah, and you mentioned how that quality is actually more important the more you rise up into a leadership
Yeah.
position. How have you seen that quality help leaders in their roles?
I think it helps, it really helps you. You can, if there's some sort of an inflammatory situation that's escalating, it helps you de-escalate it, right? It can help you bring down something that's turned very emotional because of words that were exchanged or an environment or some sort of disconnect. And it's usually very simple. It's usually just a disconnect. And because of different emotional patterns or emotional places where people are sitting, that's what causes the escalation. So being aware that everything happens for a reason and sometimes no reason at all, right? That it behooves us as leaders to really take stock of what's happening in a given environment and A, de-escalate it, and B, address individuals as those individuals that they are, and remind everyone, that we are here working as teams, not as individuals, as a collection of individuals.
Thank you, Aram. I feel like I could sit here talking to both of you for hours more and probably take out all of the goodness from your chapters, but I will resist the temptation. Um,
Yeah, I love that. I was just like listening and being inspired by Aaron because I wish everybody was like that. The world
We
would
need
be
it.
a
We
much
need
better
it for
place.
sure.
so
But it goes to show that I think that we can elevate, right, the conversation and the relationships. That's how it starts. With
Absolutely.
books like these and like the collaboration with the authors, and it's really about starting a movement so we can see transformation in the workplace in the long run.
Absolutely. One conversation at a time, right?
Exactly. One conversation at a time. We can do it.
so Aram, Julia, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with our listeners, our readers, and the changing work community. And Julia, I know you mentioned earlier how some of the things you talk about in your chapter are things you may not ever wanted to share. But on behalf of everybody who reads it and will be nourished by it, thank you so much for sharing your story. Um,
Thank
so,
you.
be-
I appreciate
yeah.
it.
So, yeah, before we conclude, if our listeners would like to learn more about you or contact you, what's the best way to do that? Let's start with you, Aaron.
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, very easily found. And then I do have a website that will be launched soon, myengagementlab.com. And so folks can reach out and learn more about me and my work efforts at that website.
Yeah, for me, I also wanted to share that I do have after this book that's coming out soon, May 30th, I have another book that is in the works for next year, May 2026 as well. And it's gonna be called Carnival Blues, and it's about a girl who's afraid of love, and it's fiction. And I also have a play that's coming out that's called Hashtag Messy at the Hollywood Fringe Festival. So you can come out and see me all June and hopefully longer in Hollywood if you're in the LA area. And I have a website, juliamelin.com. So you can look up everything that I'm working on my website. I'm also on LinkedIn. Instagram is Julia Melin Rio. And if you go on my website, I actually made it available to have 30-minute sessions with me. So that's something that I've been doing as well, offering creative sessions. So especially if you are trying to focus on that creative side, or if you feel like you have lost your passion and you want to reignite that passion or find that joy again, in, a dream or a passion that you want to focus on. So I have offered 30-minute discovery calls on my website as well, so you can connect with me on there.
That is awesome. The offer to reignite dreams and passions is quite irresistible, I would say.
Right? Yeah, that's what I thought. I feel like that's my sharing. I felt like, well, if I'm doing that for myself, but then I would love to also see other people follow their passions as well.
Thank you so much, Aram and Julia. Just to recap for everyone, Changing Work's third collaborative book, Are We Friends or Coworkers? Exploring Relationships at Work, is scheduled to be published next week, May 30th, 2025. If you enjoyed this conversation, we invite you to explore our first two best-selling books, Leading with Self-Awareness, Starting from the Inside and Out, and Leading with Compassion, Cultivating Connection from the Inside and Out. Both are available on bookshop.org, that's bookshop.org, and Amazon.com. If this conversation sparked something meaningful for you, please consider sharing it with your network. And if you'd like to connect with others on the journey to create more conscious, human-centered workplaces, we invite you to come learn more about our growing community at changingwork.org. Thank you so much for being part of the movement to change work from the inside and out. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.